What's up, weirdos? We got another one for you here, another special edition is from ZBEC Network. Their latest Future of Money episode. Tom Lutz, payroll veteran, former ADP top salesperson who helped scale it to billions, and long-term advisor to ZBEC and PGP, is going to talk ZBEC. We're going to get into this interview, guys. I'm going to play it for you. I'll be listening in the background. I hope you guys like it. As always, if you're looking for a free ZBEC airdrop, make sure you use our link down below for the Decent wallet. They will give you $20 off plus a free ZBEC airdrop to your Decent wallet. Do not miss out on that, guys. Use the coupon code FUTURE20 off down in the description. Also, make sure you join the 10% club, guys. If you want to succeed in this space, less than a cup of coffee a day to give you the tools and the training and the education that you need to become the best possible investor you can in crypto. Do not cheap out on your future, guys. Do not try to mumble and fumble your way through this space. If you do not have experience, get the help that you need to front run this market and get out before everybody else does. Don't be part of the 90%. Join the 10% today, guys. All right, let's get into it here. Let's get into this interview. Without further ado, I will leave it here. I'll be back after the interview. Enjoy, my friends.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of ZBEC's Future of Money interview series. Today we have a powerhouse guest on the show, Tom Lutz, a payroll veteran who was ADP's top performing salesperson during his time there, helping ADP scale to billions of dollars. He then went on to build and sell his own payroll company, giving him a unique perspective on both legacy systems and startup innovations in the payroll space. Tom, great to have you on.
Laura, thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on board.
Absolutely. So I think the audience would love to hear a little bit more about your background at ADP and what you've done so far.
Sure. Happy to share a little bit. I go back to 1991. I started with ADP in New York City as a young sales professional, knocking on doors in the streets of Manhattan, trying to sell payroll. And I had a great career. I loved my career at ADP. I spent 16 years helping others more than just myself. So I moved into a leadership role, and one of my strengths was building sales organizations, building teams, putting strategic approaches in place, and coaching others to become the best salesperson they possibly can and working with their clients on a day-to-day basis. So for the last 30 years, I've been in this industry, and I'm happy to spend some time with you and the team today.
Awesome. It's always great to have an industry leader or veteran on. So let's maybe move a little bit past the ADP part of your career. Take us back to the early days of when you spun off and started up your own payroll company. What sort of inspired you to start your own payroll company, and what problem were you trying to solve at the time? What was the thesis of the company?
Back then, we're going back to 07, 08. There's a lot of change going on in the industry. You know, it was a tough financial time that we went through as not just an organization. Here in America, we went through some real financial stress back then. But, you know, I noticed a lot of change going on in the industry. It was starting to become commoditized, some of these large payroll companies out there. And I had this vision that I knew we could build up our own empire if we were just focusing on the client and white glove service. So I built a company called Summit Payroll Services around this proactive approach, reaching out to clients, making sure they're well trained and given, you know, high level communication and that true white glove service that you would expect out of service organization. We weren't just cutting checks anymore.
So it sounds like you got in at a pretty unstable time. I assume that there were some hard lessons you had to learn about scaling the business during that time. What were some of those lessons, and what did you find, especially in an industry as complex and regulated as payroll, were some of those pain points?
Yeah, one of the hardest things that hit us home very quickly was how complex it is to file and deposit payroll taxes and move money properly. There's quite a bit of change that goes on when it comes to federal, state, and local payroll taxes. Staying on top of that change, the regulations were constantly moving. So that bouncing ball was tough, and our clients trusted us to keep them compliant. So that compliance focus for us was, you know, something we discussed on a day-to-day basis, and we hired some extra help just to make sure they were compliant. But that was probably one of the hardest lessons I learned when we built this organization.
That's a good point. It's interesting you mentioned that. At ZBEC, we realized that compliance was becoming the area of focus for many payroll companies as they struggle to scale, especially since you're handling sensitive financial data and you have to adhere to standards like KYC and KYB. So for those exact reasons, that's actually why we acquired a company called GateKnox in June. So GateKnox brings deep expertise in automated identity verification, AML screening, and compliance orchestration. So what this did was it brought to Zebic, and what it allowed us to do was instantly verify both employers and employees, including contractors, automate jurisdiction-specific onboarding workflows, and then also, like you mentioned, the ever-changing regulatory environment can be hard to navigate. So this acquisition of GateKnox allows us to comply with regulations across multiple geographies, especially since we've expanded into Europe and the UK. So I completely agree with your point that the ever-changing regulatory landscape of payroll, especially during the time that you were starting your payroll company, was definitely hard to navigate. And we're starting to see that become one of the primary focuses of payroll companies nowadays.
Great acquisition for your organization. Well done.
Absolutely. And we're excited to see where that'll take us to the next few months. We've only had them for about a month, so still the beginning stages. So, Tom, it sounds like you had your payroll company for a while. What ultimately led to your decision to sell the company, and what factors went into choosing the right acquire or exit strategy?
Well, great question. The exit strategy was part of our original business plan. I knew this wasn't something I was going to keep forever, but I will tell you, based on the exit strategy, we executed much quicker than we originally planned, about 3 years sooner than our original business plan. But that exit strategy had probably, say, 2 or 3 very important bullets. One was whoever acquired Summit Payroll Services, their culture was a critical piece for me. And they need to have the right team in place that focused on each client and servicing that client. The other thing was training, right? I put training and I put communication, sort of bundle that together. That was an important piece also, because there's always constant change going on, compliance going on in the back office. You need to make sure you're communicating and training the clients and make sure they're always up to speed. And the third, which was critical as well, is we needed a 100% conversion rate. I wanted to make sure every one of our clients has now trusted us with their families, because we're actually cutting their payroll checks. I want to make sure every one of our clients was comfortable moving over to the new gentleman that acquired Summit Payroll Services. And I'm glad and happy to say that 100% of them did.
That's great to hear. So it sounds like the factors that led to your decision to sell the company were more qualitative than financially focused or numbers focused.
Absolutely. You have to build trust in this industry. And Summit Payroll Services, we cared about our clients, so we want to make sure they're well taken care of. We weren't one of the larger big box players that have been around for many, many years just processing checks. That's not what we were about. The culture and the sort of the backbone of Summit Payroll Services was always focused on the client.
It sounds like you were trying to give your clients the best service possible and constantly innovating to reach their level or their standards, which, again, at Zebic, we completely agree with. That's sort of the focus of our M&A approach as well. We're not looking to just acquire companies. We want to make sure that we're partnering with founders who are deeply embedded in their industries. You want to make sure that there's a focus on continuous innovation and that the clients of those companies we acquire are receiving the highest level of service possible. So that's actually what we do with 2 of our acquisitions. So you know about our acquisition of PayBridge.
Yes.
Tony, for the past 2 years, and what we've done is been able to roll out products like EWA, pay cards, with a focus on innovation to make sure that those clients can reach and have a level of service that is unmatched compared to some of the legacy players in the industry. It's more of a focus, like you said, on customer service, making sure conversions at the highest level and that they're completely satisfied with the level of service that they're receiving. So moving on then to more about the payroll industry and your views on it, what would you say has changed the most since you were running your company? And then on the flip side, what surprisingly stayed the same?
Oh my goodness. There's been so much change through the payroll industry over the years. I go back almost 35 years now in payroll experience. So when you start to look back, human resources didn't even exist. There was maybe someone in personnel through birthday parties, but you look at the regulations that were starting to put in place into the 90s, that's when things started to shift quite a bit. So there's always constant change when it comes to regulation. I can't say that enough. But when you look at the actual industry as a whole, way back then, it was dominated by the larger payroll providers. There were a few large payroll providers out there. When you look at certain industries, there was in-house software folks that did their own payroll in-house and didn't outsource it to a payroll provider. So back then, payroll wasn't considered sort of mission critical for the business. It was a necessary evil to cut the employees' checks on time and make sure the taxes are paid. So when you look at what it was then and where it is today, you look at money movement and the real-time expectations that an employee has of receiving funds. If I work today, many people want to get paid today. And you know what? They probably want to get paid in different currencies. That shouldn't be just one currency, put it that way. And it's a much more strategic industry today than it was 30 years ago. Back then, it was just cutting checks. Now, HR is the backbone of compliance for an organization. And they have to make sure that the regulations are carefully monitored and taken care of. So there's no issues when it comes to compliance across the organization. So quite a bit of change. And I would think one of the keys in change and where we are today is, I guess, access to funds. Back in the day, it was just cutting manual checks. I started before there was direct deposit, and look where people are today and how they want access to their funds when they finish a workday.
I'm actually really glad you brought that part up. I agree that while the tech stack has evolved over the past 50, 60, 70 years, especially with cloud platforms and APIs, I would argue that a lot of the core inefficiencies in payroll still haven't changed. So it's first ADP software that came out in, I want to say it was like maybe even the 60s. I don't think the payroll system has changed much since then. It's still the same payroll cycle or pay cycle and all that. So I completely agree that people do want a more innovative approach. Like today, they want to get their money as soon as it's made. They don't want to wait 2 weeks or a month or whatever the pay cycle is. And that's been one of the biggest pain points we've observed in the industry. And that's sort of one of the biggest problems and issues that we want to tackle with our real-time payments payroll system. So building off of this question, what pain points in payroll do you think are still underserved? Areas that you think today's solutions haven't quite solved yet?
It's funny how we bled right into that question because you're right. You're spot on. Payroll's payroll. It's always been payroll. That's really not going to change much when you look at a core payroll. It's cutting checks on usually a biweekly or sometimes a weekly basis, that all that structure. And it's still, and I hate to use the word old school structure, but it is sort of an old school structure when it comes to the technology that's in place. I think that's, and the pain around that is given because there's lack of flexibility. When you look at certain industries and they need a lot of flexibility and data from their worker and the jobs that they're doing, that those old school systems, they just don't have. They were made to cut a check from gross to net. In addition to that, I would say the way the employee actually receives those funds, it's still pretty much driven off of a paycheck, right? And then they just create a different way to move that money to them. So I think those pain points are still out there today. And as we are looking forward, I think what I'm starting to see with the conversations I've had with your organization, you're moving in the right direction on how you want to transform that.
I'm really glad to hear that. So it's rare to see somebody in the traditional payroll industry be receptive to some of these new innovations, at least in blockchain, in payments. So it's refreshing to hear that real-time payments can be an option or is the future to solve these issues like slow settlement times, settlement fees, and breaking this traditional 2-week pay cycle or whatever pay cycle it is that these employees are on. So I guess now that we're on the topic of real-time payments and blockchain, there's been a lot of buzz around the news, especially with crypto and payments being hot right now. What's your take on real-time payments and embedded finance and maybe blockchain-based payroll? Do you believe it's just hype or is it genuinely transformative?
It's the future. I believe that that is definitely the future. I like to use the word transformative in that question. It is our future. I think we need to embrace a global outreach with multiple currencies. I think we need to also look at how we pay those people. Look at the different types of people that are working today. They're not all W-2 employees anymore that punch a clock from 9 to 5. They work at the same job for 35 years and get a pension. Those days have changed drastically. So the type of worker, the type of job, and how they receive their funds for working that day or week or month, I think is changing drastically. And as we embrace this global outreach with multiple currencies, I think you're going to see that go down our path versus the old school biweekly paycheck.
I totally hear you. You mentioned multiple currencies a few times on this episode. Is the idea behind what you're saying more so that these employees have more flexibility in the currency they want to receive, or more so from the employer's perspective that they can offer wages in multiple different countries without having to worry about regulation across different regions?
I'm glad you brought that up. I think both, right? As an employee and the employee experience, the employer needs to be aware of that and understand the employee experience and truly want to understand what's best for that employee. And then the employer should be able to execute it. So I think the employer is going to have more flexibility, and it's going to lead to the employee having more choice. And that's where we're going to transform down the road.
No, that makes complete sense. And I'd take that even a step further to say, even some of these employees, one of the things they look for a lot, especially in the US, given we have one of the highest immigration rates, is remitting funds or just cross-border payments. And it's especially hard to do that in today's economy if you take away blockchain and crypto, mainly because you have to go to like a Western Union, pay a 10% fee, and then the recipient also has to pay a fee when they go pick up those funds. But what we can do now and today, and that's one of the core ideas of our card product, is to be able to remit funds cross-border at low to no fees, and it's done instantly. So being able to send money from USD to Euro or USD to GBP or whatever currency it is that people are trying to remit back, it's definitely possible and doable. It's instant compared to the outdated versions of what you have like Western Union and MoneyGram and all these other money order methods. So no, I completely agree. I think that it is the future. And logically, I think it's the next step. I don't think it's just a trend. I think it's going to be a full-scale adoption in the next 5-10 years, maybe even sooner. Nobody really expected crypto to adopt as fast as it is today, and we're already seeing it hit all-time highs and adoption reaching the highest levels we've ever seen.
Agreed.
So, Tom, just to wrap this up, you've shared a lot of insight on your experience in the payroll industry, what you've seen over the past 10, 15, 30 years, and what you've done at ADP in your own payroll company. What advice would you give to a new founder entering the payroll or fintech space today, especially someone trying to build something different and stand out?
Well, if I were going to sit someone down, give advice, or if I were going to do it again, the first thing I would do is sit down and develop my business plan. I would have a long-term business plan with, flexibility, I would say, is one of the first things that comes to mind. I'd want this recurring revenue model that's attractive to me in the payroll industry, and have a detailed strategic approach on how we're going to grow that volume. That's the first thing. And, when I build my business plan on flexibility, when I say flexibility, I mean, you think about not just the employer, but the employee and access to their wages. Like I've said earlier, the multi-currency. You also have to think, that end user experience. Right now, it's all mobile and it should be multilingual, right? When you're building that business plan out. The other thing I would make sure is part of that is you want to have high-end security and compliance. That needs to be core to the business that you're building. There's just no room for error when you run a payroll, right? That goes without being said. But you also have to make sure that the data that you're storing remains confidential and secure. You've built trust with your clients. You don't have top-notch security built within your system. That's going to be a problem long-term. And whether or not you build it, you might not have the funds or the expertise to build it. That's okay. Then partner in that area. And you can build, borrow, or buy, right? I would say you partner in that area first is one of the things I think about, and make sure that each person and each client has secure data and is very compliant with the ever-changing laws and regulations that we have. That's real and important in this business plan. So I would say that's probably my second bullet. And my third bullet, I would probably tell you to think vertically. I would find like a special niche that you want to be an expert in. You want to drill down in great detail and be the expert within that vertical niche, whether it be shift workers or contractors. There's so many different areas you can choose, but I would do some homework and find where most of the pain might lie. And if you can find out where that pain is, for instance, let's say, in a specific industry, there are people that are working hard, but they have to wait a week or 2 weeks to get paid, and that type of worker needs payment immediately. There might be a nice vertical or niche there that you can build a strong foundation and expand your business very quickly by going into that vertical. or that specialty niche that you have there. And remember, payroll's a necessity. It's complex, it's time-bound, it's stressful. Think how you can go help people. So you want to make sure when you're looking for this niche, find the people that are losing sleep over payroll and become the expert in that field. I think with those, as you bundle that up there, that's a great way to sit down and put your business plan together and go to market.
Tom, thank you for that insightful answer. It's been great having you on today. I'm sure the audience has loved to learn about your experience at ADP and your own payroll company. And I'm sure they would appreciate your insights and some of your observations of the payroll industry over the past 30 years.
Well, thanks, Parth. I really appreciate you inviting me on, and I look forward to future conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom.
I love these AMAs and these interviews at ZBEC. The transparency across the board, guys, being on top of what's happening with your investments in these companies is the most important thing, my friends. Listen, I talk about this often. I'd say about 75% of the people who invest in crypto have absolutely zero interest at all in actually getting educated and becoming good at this. They want to accidentally get rich, right? I would highly recommend making sure that you're getting educated, learning how to do research. If you want to succeed in this space, guys, if you truly want to make true life-changing wealth for yourself, you got to put in the work. You got to put in the time. I know that a lot of people don't have time. They work extra jobs and all that kind of stuff. Guys, listen, put the Netflix away, whatever it is you got to do, right? When you're working, have stuff playing in the background so you can listen to it. Whatever it is you got to do, right, to make sure you're getting educated. And listen, one of the top things we do over in the 10% Club is we do your research for you, and we help point out things you need to know, right? For less than a cup of coffee a day, guys, we can help you exit this market ahead of time before everybody else and make sure you're actually making that life-changing wealth. We can help you structure a portfolio fully. One of the things we're doing in the bear market is we are going to teach everybody from scratch how to build a portfolio from zero all the way through an entire cycle, to do it correctly, to do it properly, to truly make life-changing wealth, generational wealth for you and your family. Join the 10% Club today, guys. The link is down in the description. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. I'll see you guys in the next one. God bless.